Welcome back to the Carolina Weather Group. We're happy to have you this evening as we wrap up our college series. Last week, we introduced you to 12 students who are studying meteorology programs throughout the country, and you got an idea of who they are, what drove them into the studies. But tonight, we're going to be talking more about the schools, the programs, and what makes their college town more interesting or most interesting and fun to be at. This is a great show for anyone who will be applying to the program. So maybe you'll hear of a college or maybe a certain path down the meteorology degree that interests you. And we want to hear from you, your firsthand account. So let us know if you found this programming interesting. So for that, let's go back and introduce you to our panel: Evan Fisher, Frank Straight, Shay Gibson, Dan Whitaker, and most importantly, our students: Dylan, Jake, Ethan, Aric, Robert, Justin, Katie, Andrew, Chandler, and Brianna. How did Florida State kind of win your heart to prefer or to pursue the meteorological degree?
So in terms of looking at undergraduate programs, obviously living in Florida, FSU was a good option just because of the affordability of the school. And I'll touch up on some of that stuff a little bit later, I'd imagine, in terms of like looking for different schools. But I'll kind of focus more on the grad school side of things, because I think that's something that really is like a experience that I can kind of bring to the table here. When it comes to applying for different grad schools, it's not necessarily about applying to the school, saying, okay, I want to go to school in North Carolina, for example. When you're applying for grad schools, it's really looking at specific projects, specific areas of research that really pique your interest, and finding different professors and people to work with that kind of match with your interest, and you have that chance to kind of build a bit of a professional connection with, and imagine yourself being mentored by that person. And when it came to Florida State, I had a new professor who had just come into FSU that semester in the spring of 2017. Her name's Dr. Allison Ling. And we basically met at our Meteorology Honor Society banquets that April. I didn't really know anything about her at the time. I was still kind of making my final decisions as to grad schools. I had an offer as a teaching assistant from FSU. But I was introduced to her at this banquet, and ultimately ended up having a kind of sit down 30-minute meeting with her where she kind of ran me through her research, some of the things that she did as a postdoc, and kind of what her mentoring, advising style would be like. And it was just a home run, and it was the best decision I've ever made. So Florida State also is unique in that it really does have a good connection with pretty much every sector of meteorology. We have, obviously, Mississippi State is, the absolute broadcast meteorologist factory, but FSU is definitely right up at the top of the rest of the pack there. We have a 30-minute student-run, student-produced, all the students are on air TV show that is entirely devoted to weather, actually airs on the PBS station in Tallahassee, as well as streaming on YouTube. And that's a fantastic opportunity, not just for those that are looking to get into broadcast meteorology, but are looking to improve on their communication skills.
It was definitely kind of a coincidence. I was already looking at Florida State. Financially, they're pretty decent for out-of-staters, like one of the cheaper ends. And also, I liked Florida State because they are tropical meteorology capital, basically. Them and NC State really rule the tropical meteorology sector. My dream job is a hurricane hunter. I learned about how, the National Hurricane Center is full of Florida State grads. And I was just like, I'm going to definitely strive to get into this university, or at least NC State if I can't get into Florida State.
I definitely did apply to OU. That was one that I was considering. I applied to FSU, Georgia Tech, Cornell, a few other ones in there. When I got my acceptances back, I got a lot of good offers, but at the end of the day, FSU actually offered me a full ride off of the basis of national merit. And OU was like, hey, you still got to pay $10K. And I'm like, OU is a great school. I know there are some great people there. I have a few friends there. FSU, I also have a few friends there, but I don't have to pay. Pretty good calculus for me, just in my opinion. But I am also really excited to go to FSU because of course, the meteorology program there is really good. It's really focused on tropical meteorology, which is something that I don't have as much experience with in the past. So I really wanted to branch out. Sort of, I know a little bit about winter weather. I know a little bit about severe weather, but really haven't known as much as tropical storms. I haven't even been under a hurricane local statement until I was at Tallahassee this last year. That's the first time I was under any tropical related product.
What's your thing that must be done if you're visiting Tallahassee for anything, whether it's a FSU football game or a conference or just passing through? What's something you got to do in Tallahassee when you're in the area?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go for a slightly different vibe, and think if you're trying to relax a little bit because of all the hustle and bustle of downtown Tallahassee and the kind of, the areas with the bars near the stadium and everything like that. Obviously, all that stuff's out there, and there are kind of different sections of town that are, I think, ideal for different audiences. Maybe if you're like if you're not really looking for a place that's kind of riddled with college students, there's a place called Midtown where you can get kind of a quieter atmosphere and can still just go enjoy, your time with some friends and everything. But one thing that I'll point to, I think the Tallahassee area is actually very underrated in terms of its nature. And Tallahassee's park system is fantastic. But one place that I'll point to in particular is called the Res, which is basically this lakefront kind of beach that FSU actually runs and allows FSU students and the public to kind of access. And you can do things like, canoe and kayak rental, beach volleyball, disc golf, pretty much anything you can imagine that's kind of like an outdoor kind of beachy sort of activity that a lot of schools don't really have, which is a really cool way to kind of relax after finals for the students or to kind of get everybody together at the start of a semester or something along those lines. And I'll also point you to something that's actually pretty unique. They only do them a couple of times a year, but FSU, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of the campus or maybe have watched, when the NCAA regionals for baseball are in Tallahassee. But if you've ever seen something over the right field fence during those games, you might notice what looks like a circus tent. And FSU actually has its own circus, which is, I think it's one of only 2 colleges in the country that has that. And it's really interesting because basically students will take a class at the beginning of the semester, which is basically just a class where you kind of learn how to do some kind of, circus-based act, whether it be like a trapeze or, anything along those lines. And some of the students will actually participate in the shows that they do later on in the fall. They do like a Halloween series of shows where they have them all, decked out in crazy costumes and stuff. And then they also do one in the spring. So I think that's a really, something that FSU brings to the table. That's like a really cool idea for people that are, living on campus and maybe need something to do at some point in the fall.
Also, your favorite restaurant?
There's a few good ones. I'll throw one that's a little bit of a cheaper option. It's called Gordo's. It's a Cuban restaurant about half mile west of the football stadium. There's this other cluster of bars and restaurants called College Town, and everybody else will probably recommend to you Madison Social, which is a place that opened in 2013. That's pretty much like the closest place you could, grab a burger or something before actually going to the stadium. You can see the stadium from the patio and everything. And I would definitely recommend it. It's an awesome place, but I'll mix it up a little bit. They got, live music and stuff. It's a slightly quieter atmosphere out there. It's a little bit removed from the craziness of campus. So I think that's a good bet, and it's something that's pretty Tallahassee unique.
Aric, you're a senior, and you're doing the broadcast meteorology program from Mississippi State. So I guess obviously the broadcast online broadcast meteorology degree from Mississippi State, hands down the most popular route that a lot of broadcast meteorologists have already done. So what made you really decide on that?
The reason I kind of chose Mississippi State, because kind of like you mentioned, it is one of the most popular programs for broadcast meteorologists. As of right now, that is the track that I want to go into. And it being online, it's the perfect kind of opportunity for me as far as working full-time and trying to balance that school and work-life schedule to try to get that accomplished so I can kind of transition myself out of the biotech industry.
Chose Mississippi State. I went down there for a tour and got the rundown of everything. Got a tour of their facilities and stuff. And there was a statistic I found out about. I think it's 1 in every 3 broadcast meteorologists on television went to Mississippi State or have ties to Mississippi State. Some crazy statistic like that. And I've always loved the idea of the South and Mississippi.
Suppose I'm coming to Starkville or the area for a conference or maybe visiting the school. Aside from that, what's something that I need to do in that area? Not necessarily touristy, just something fun to do.
If you could do one thing, it would be drive through downtown. We have a place, a little strip, they call it Stark Vegas, called the Cotton District. There's a bunch of cool bars and restaurants and old kind of, Louisiana, New Orleans style Mardi Gras buildings. And that is the place to hang out on campus. You know, after a football game, after a baseball game, everybody goes there, hangs out on the street. It would be comparable to the street at UNC Chapel Hill. I forget the name of it, but kind of that atmosphere. And especially, you know, when COVID and stuff gets when everything gets lessened as far as restrictions having to do with that. There's a big Bulldog Bash that we throw. We have concerts, everything funded by Mississippi State. And it really is Mississippi's college town. It's a really small town. And when you get outside of town, there's nothing. But the town and the university is the town. We have a really nice downtown. What else? Definitely baseball games, football games, tailgating at football games is something that I'm excited to experience. And will definitely be fun for me, but just soaking up the atmosphere, the whole community. You know, there's retirement communities and the people of Starkville will all swarm out on move-in day at Mississippi State and help the students move in. There's a lot of family feel and atmosphere and connection with the people of Starkville and Mississippi State.
What schools were you looking at and what made you finally decide on Oklahoma?
I went to a weather camp when I was in 10th grade over the summer at Penn State, and it was a fantastic weather camp, and it was a great school. But what really decided that I didn't want to go there was it was in the middle of nowhere. There was an hour cornfield to get there, and then you're there, and it's just this small kind of college town. Great atmosphere, don't get me wrong, and it's a great school, but I knew I didn't want to go there. So I started looking at other meteorology schools, and I was mainly looking at Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Florida State, and toured all three of those schools. Really liked Oklahoma and Florida State just based on the tours. And then finally, I decided that I grew up in Charleston, and we had tropical weather there. Florida State was roughly the same climate, and they're also more tropical focused. So I wanted the experience of the severe storms that the plains have, and of course, being here, we have the National Weather Center right on campus, which is where we have our classes and everything. So I'm glad that I made the decision that I did. But I know that there's a lot of other great schools too that are good options for meteorology programs.
What is the thing that something that a visitor to Central Oklahoma, OKC Metro must do when you're in town?
Out here in Oklahoma, it's a lot more of the Wild West kind of culture. And so let's see, definitely tour the National Weather Center when it opens back up. It is absolutely an incredible building. And just in the OKC area, there's really good food, especially like Mexican food. It's really, really good here.
Yeah, I concur with that. I tried Pepe Delgado's when I visited Norman, and I thought it was outstanding.
And the steak is amazing here too. So,
Ethan, I want to kind of transition to you first because you're a freshman, and so I'm not sure you probably have stepped foot all in Penn State, but I'm sure the college process was a little bit maybe harder for you as you're battling through COVID. You don't really get to see the full campus experience. So let's talk about you first going to Penn State. How did you choose Penn State? What were some other schools that you were interested in? And let's kind of talk about that process.
So my college process started, I guess, junior year. We went down to College Station and saw it toward Texas A&M. That was a cool campus, cool program. And then I decided to go up to State College and tour Penn State, which I really enjoyed touring it. So I ended up applying to Texas A&M, Penn State, NC State, Oklahoma, UNC Asheville, and UNC Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. And then when I got my acceptance letters back, I decided to go back to Penn State, check it out, met with some professors, did a tour. Campus was super cool. Program looked really cool. So I decided that I would leave the Carolinas and try something different for a few years and go up to the Northeast and experience some snow, hopefully. Probably a year there will be no snow. It'll be like a rare drought, no snow.
The truth comes,
you will experience snow in State College. You won't get very many big storms, but there'll be snow in the air a lot of the time.
The truth comes out. Ethan's just going to Penn State for snow. I get it now. I understand.
Ethan, instead, I'll ask you about your hometown, the Raleigh area. What is something that you must do if you're visiting your hometown?
Come to Raleigh, and you come during hockey season, you must go to a Canes game. It's a true experience. So I wasn't really into Hurricanes games for a while, and then I started getting into them. So that's a good experience. And Raleigh has an awesome restaurant life, so especially downtown. So the restaurants in Raleigh are pretty good. And then there's some decent parks if you're really into parks. Dorothea Dix is a super cool park that is going to be much cooler once they get done working on it. It's supposed to be a very cool park. So the parks, the restaurants, and then Umstead State Park, another great place to go to.
You're going to be going to Champs, and you're going to be going to Uncle Chin's, and you're going to when you get to State College and Happy Valley Brewing. But tell me about the Raleigh area. What's your one must-visit restaurant when you're in town?
If you come to Raleigh, there's a lot of choices. Pretty hard to narrow down to one, but there's a small restaurant. It's very small inside. It's like it's like European style restaurant. The way it looks inside, and it takes you back into the 50s and 40s. It's a very old time themed restaurant. It's called Hayes Barton Cafe. They have fantastic cakes, but if you come late July into August, get the tomato pie is like the best that I've ever had in my life. So definitely there, and then probably the Pit is awesome if you like barbecue.
You can actually find decent barbecue in Happy Valley. Hogs galore, you have to drive a ways to get to them, but they're not bad, and Doan's Bones is not bad.
Ethan, I was debating. I was like, I wonder if he says the Pit or the Angus Barn, because that's another good place to eat in Raleigh. Is the Angus Barn.
The Angus Barn, yeah. You can't go wrong with the Angus Barn either if you're ready to pay a price. But yes,
I've decided I got to get up to Raleigh and try some of these places and get to a Canes game. I haven't been to one yet, and I really want to go. I'm a Canes fan, big time.
What kind of drew you to UNC Charlotte? What was that process like?
Well, I grew up in the Charlotte area, so when I was applying to colleges, I looked at primarily NC State and UNC Charlotte. For meteorology specifically. That was my original goal going into college. Obviously took a couple turns and I'm still at UNC Charlotte, but I've grown up going to basketball games here at Charlotte. I've just always had a connection to it. It was right here, 30 minutes from home. They had a meteorology program that was smaller, but I kind of like the smaller feel. You got to be a little bit closer to your peers.
I didn't necessarily pick the school based on what I knew my professors got up to, but it turns out quite a few of our professors are heavily into the research with severe storms. I don't know if any of you know Casey Davenport. She's one of the professors at UNC Charlotte. She actually worked on one of the Vortex projects, which to little like freshman or sophomore me that found that out was the coolest thing ever. I was just like, oh, I can't wait to pick her brain about that. But that was really cool. And then another one of our professors he does a lot of severe weather research as well. And it was a very casual atmosphere because there's so few of us. So we always talked about storm chasing, and every time severe weather would happen, we'd kind of sit and chat about it. So that was definitely a good experience to have when you're more into the severe weather side of things, because it gives you a nice perspective into the world of storm chasing.
What's something you got to do when you're coming to visit Charlotte?
Well, I love to go to Carowinds. There's an amusement park that's about half an hour away, and their whole thing is that they're on the border of North and South Carolina. So sometimes you're in North Carolina, sometimes you're in South Carolina. When I first moved to Charlotte, my parents gave me a gold pass to the amusement park as a gift, and every year I've gotten it since. That was their welcome to Charlotte gift. Here's the amusement park pass. So if you like rides, definitely Carowinds, I recommend. And then during this time of year, about to be September, October, they do Scarowinds, and I am very into Halloween, so I love Scarowinds too.
Let me break in here because I always mention when I hear Carowinds, that was my first job when I was a teenager. I made funnel cakes. I made probably 10,000 funnel cakes a year for 2 seasons at Carowinds.
Whoa, I'm learning something new about you, Frank. I did not know that.
That was my first job when I was a teenager. I was 16.
Living in Danville, Virginia. So I know Virginia Tech, not practically in your backyard, but pretty close. What other schools did you apply to, and finally, kind of what drew you to Virginia Tech?
Fun fact, I only applied to Virginia Tech. Okay. I didn't apply anywhere else. I had a lot hinging on getting accepted into Tech. And the decision process behind that is tuition. And I was going for in-state tuition as I'm right now swamped in debt already. So, yeah, I wanted to keep that to a minimum. And so I was left with 2 choices to pursue meteorology in Virginia, those being Virginia Tech and GMU, I believe. They have a program as well. And so for me, Virginia Tech, that program, it still is in its infancy if you think about it. I think it just formed in 2013. So young program. And I was like, man, it's close to home. It's in the mountains. They have a good football program, what appears to be a really good meteorology program in the making. And I was like, I'll go ahead and just give it my all for Virginia Tech. So that's what led me here.
Okay, Justin, we'll move on to you. You're the first Virginia Tech guy that we've had on, so you can tell us about Blacksburg. I know a little bit because I've, in 20 years of living in Pennsylvania and having family still back here in Carolinas, I passed by Blacksburg 100 times and visited a couple of times. But so you can tell us what are some must-do things if you're visiting Blacksburg.
It goes without saying, attending a Lane Stadium game. It doesn't matter, night, day, early season, late season, you're going to get the same end result, and that's going to be an incredible atmosphere. Every Hokie, I would say, even those that have not any type of remote interest in football, will still preach just how fun it is and how amazing it is and how they'll always remember going to Lane Stadium. I don't know whether I think it's just tradition at this point. Everybody, they feel it, they have it in them. And so it leads to a great atmosphere. Beyond that, Blacksburg is fortunate to be based in the Alps, or the Appalachian Mountains. And so there's plenty of nature opportunities, whether you're a hiker or a rafter or kayaker. There's a new river. I would suggest the Cascades if you're ever around here. If not, Bald Knob and Mountain Lake are just a 20-minute drive up the road where they film Dirty Dancing. And that's a really easy hike if you're not a very experienced hiker. It's like maybe 15 minutes up a gravel road and you get an amazing view with the sunset. So there really isn't, despite the rural area and kind of being off the major population centers, there's no shortage of things to do in the area.
Justin, Blacksburg, what's one restaurant you have to try if you're in or passing through Blacksburg?
There used to be a bed and breakfast, but they just closed down. I would otherwise have 100% said that. Otherwise, beyond there, I don't eat out terribly often. But when I have, every time I've had Benny's Pizza, I know it's a chain. It's very tasty. You get a very big slice. The people that you're with or around are normally pretty happy and well-minded. You're going to be in a good crowd, good pizza. So I would suggest to the travelers coming through, that's worth a visit.
If you had one word of advice to students who are in college right now, or maybe high school seniors, juniors looking into meteorology program, what would that be? Katie, I'll start with you.
Even if you're not math inclined, just still give it a shot. So like I said, I really struggled with math. Every math class I've ever taken, I had a tutor, and I went to office hours a lot, but it is possible. I passed all 11 of the math classes that I needed, and it is doable if you're passionate enough and you love if you love weather enough, you can get through it.
Don't shy away from programming. Andrew and Katie have kind of alluded to it. Programming is becoming very prevalent in meteorology and almost a necessary skill, regardless of if you go into broadcast or research or academia or whatever. Don't shy away from taking those courses, and you don't have to stick with one particular language over another. You can diversify yourself a little bit.
Don't be afraid to try things. I knew for a fact that I didn't want to do broadcast, and here I am really considering it as a career choice. And it's only because I tried it. If I hadn't tried it, I wouldn't be even considering it still. And I think also kind of going off of that is don't be afraid to talk to your professors about problems you're having in class. Like, Katie mentioned her, math in meteorology is hard. And yes, math is a big part of meteorology, but, you can get through it because everybody's in the same boat as you. There's only a few people that would consider themselves good at math, I think. And so once you start to realize that and are able to get past the fear of studying math and going to office hours for help and that kind of thing, it's definitely manageable. And applying it to meteorology is enjoyable to me, at least. So there's always that.
I'd love to give you the opportunity to share out any social media accounts that our listeners or followers, maybe they can follow you along your journey. Katie, we'll start with you. Do you have a social media platform you'd like to promote?
So my Instagram is at WX_KT, just a K and a T. And then my Twitter is the same thing, except it's KT Melvin, Melvin.
My Twitter is at ToadWX, TOADWX. That's where most of my weather stuff gets posted, variety of things that I create or things pertaining to my research or anything I find interesting weather-wise.
My weather Twitter is at Andrews_weather. And I do share some Carolina-related stuff, some Oklahoma-related stuff. So, just kind of a good mix.
So you can find me on Twitter at Jake Carstens. My last name is Carstens. So feel free to find me there. I also just launched my personal website a few months ago, just carstensweather.com, same spelling. I think those are the main two for me.
My main platform as far as weather goes would be my Twitter. It's Dylan Hudler, WX capitalized, spelled just as you see it here on the thing.
So you can just look me up on Instagram. My Instagram handle is my first name, ARIC, _ my last name, ILBIG. Just tell me you heard from me from the Carolina Weather Group, so I know you're just not some stranger.
I have two platforms if you want any type of weather content, at least. The first being Foggy Cow Weather Forecasting. That's a forecasting page. It's been around for a couple of years on Facebook. Originally created by VT meteorology students, and it's been passed down over the years. And I just recently took control of the helm with another friend of mine. So for another 2 years, you can expect forecasts for any type of significant weather event in Virginia and also surrounding areas. Like today, North Carolina was included in my map for the storm threat. And then apart from that, my Twitter handle, the J Buczynski WX. I'm not sure if I should spell that out or not, because that's a pretty complicated name, but I storm chase pretty frequently and I forecast as well. So there's all sorts of weather content on there, but I try to, for the most part, keep it strictly on topic for meteorology. So those would be, I think, a good follow in my personal opinion. I toot my own horn. So
awesome. Good follow on Twitter. I'll follow you on Twitter. I didn't know about the Facebook page, so we'll have to look at that. But Robert, what about you?
Best way to find anything, updates about me, or I keep it a lot about weather too on my Twitter is my Twitter handle is Pesh Weekly WX or PESH. That's the actual name of my high school. I did some weather updates for it. I just haven't changed it because I liked it. So if you find that a little complicated, you can also just search my name on Twitter, Robert Szot, SZOT. And that's where I do most of my activities is on my Twitter.
So my personal Twitter is always a good place to go. I try to do some forecasting for the state of North Carolina. So it's Ethan Clark WX. So it's pretty easy, just Ethan Clark WX. And I post a decent amount of stuff on there. Sometimes get off topic and post some coastal pictures, but mostly weather-related stuff, but some storm chase stuff.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is at ChanWXman. So
That's a good one. I like it. Brianna?
My Twitter handle is at Brianna Fox WX.
We want to thank all the college students who gave us time for this series as we recorded it right as students were moving into the dorms. So a really hectic time for us to be recording these with the students, but we're very appreciative of their time. And we wish all of them the best of luck. And wherever this atmospheric degree, meteorology degree takes them, we wish them the best of luck. There's so much that we did talk about that we wasn't able to fit into our programming here. So we'd like to invite you to catch our episode extras, and you can do that by supporting the Carolina Weather Group on Patreon. For just $1.99, you'll get extra content from select episodes, including this one, which includes some raw interviews from our new friends. For now, I'm Scotty Powell. We'll see you back here soon for another episode of the Carolina Weather Group.